Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home. Welcome to Strong Dads. This is Merrill Hutchinson, and today, if you can see, if you're watching, we have replaced Kyle Crawford.
Aww.
Finally, I was able to dump him.
Oh, man. I can't believe you are so mean to him, Kyle. I know you're going to be watching this. I'm just going to say I'm going to stand up for you, Kyle, because Merrill can be mean sometimes. Are you just going to throw him under the bus?
I'm mean. No.
Leave him out in the cold? He's never going to come back.
Actually, in case those of you out there watching, this is my wife, Linda Hutchinson. Welcome, Linda, to the Strong Dads podcast for another great show.
Do I have to talk like a man?
Yeah, you got to have a little bit of gravel in your gut.
Oh, gosh.
Anyway, Linda's joining us because, on a serious note, Kyle's got COVID.
You're not going to keep very serious very long, I can tell.
No.
There should be some sympathy for him.
I called him, or he and I went back and forth, and I called him, and I said, dude, how you doing? And as soon as he's like, I feel great. Then I was like, oh, well, then I have no sympathy.
He's not going to come back. I mean, I'm going to have to be your permanent
he'll
replacement.
Come back. He can't beat the pay.
Wow.
The pay.
Ooh, yeah.
The pay is hard to live without. 0 + 0 = 0.
Exactly.
All right. So anyway, hon, we do want to thank you for joining the Strong Dads podcast today. And it actually worked out very well because Kyle and I are doing a series about protection and sort of what it is that we need to protect. And we've talked about protecting just relationships. We've talked about protecting our home. And specifically, we're going to talk today about protecting the marriage.
Oh, okay.
And so you were a perfect fill-in today.
Oh,
because
I was a little worried when you said protection. Anyway, I'm glad it's about marriage and relationships.
Yeah, I'm not even sure where your head's going with the protection thing, other than I don't probably want to talk about it. But anyway, so part of the benefit here is Linda and I, for all you strong dads out there, I think it's really important that we do talk about, not just from a man's perspective, about what it is that we are called to protect in the marriage. But, hon, I do want to ask you through this course of the show, what do you want a man, your husband, and in this case, me, where would you like me stepping up? Or when you work with women in particular, or when you work with a couple, where do you see women saying, I just wish that he would be more aware of this, whatever that is in terms of protection. So I think it is going to be great that, I don't know, I'm not going to say God ordained the COVID on Kyle, but hey, we're going to make the best of this.
COVID?
Yeah. Kyle, we are just teasing, brother. I do hope you get feeling better and get you back here. Yeah. All right, let's thank a couple sponsors here. So Strong Dads would like to thank the Crimer's Beer House for coming alongside Strong Dads. So for all of your fine dining and a great atmosphere, go down and see Mark Crimer down at the Crimer's Beer House located on 128 outside of Cleves, Ohio.
Yeah.
Strong Dads would also like to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions. So Casey has been a sponsor of both the Rock Solid Radio Show as well as the Strong Dad Show. And it continues to come alongside us for yet another year. And so we want to thank Casey and his crew for all of the support they give us and just the work that Casey's willing to do for our community. So we want to thank Casey. So go down and support Casey and let him help you with your landscaping or your gifts or any kind of home decor.
I listen to Strong Dads, and I have not heard you really talk about or promote our Secure the Knot marriage workshop, but it would be a perfect time to do that. You and I are going to be presenting along with Greg Edens, pastor of Breakerson Church, and we're going to be presenting at an event. It's a one-day event on Saturday, February 19th from 9 to 5 p.m. And I know every guy out there is giving a big sigh like, whole day on
Dude,
Saturday.
put this down as your Valentine's Day gift
seriously.
to your wife,
Yeah.
and she will think you are the
Bee's
you're
knees,
the dog,
man.
bee's
Yeah,
knees.
yeah.
You are putting it down, because a lot of the things that we cover in the Secure the Knot marriage retreat or workshop are things about really the protection mode and how the cool thing, I think, Linda, that you and I get to do in there is we get to talk from male perspective as well as female perspective. And so it's not like read out of a textbook, or, well, this is how we should be. It's really very much you saying, from your perspective, me from my perspective, but trying to cover how God created man and woman.
Yeah.
To bring this thing called a marriage together. So anyway, come on out. You can contact Bright Christian Church to get registered. It's a $60 fee.
Yeah.
And Bright Christian Church, that's 812-637-3388. So give them a call. And I think probably sooner rather than later, right?
Yeah, the deadline is, I think, February 11th or something like that. But you can go to brightcc.org and register online. That $60 includes two of you, breakfast and a catered lunch. And so it really is going to be worth your day. And you're going to have a lot of quality time with your spouse. And I've already had somebody ask, like, what if we're not equally yoked? What if my husband or my wife isn't really a believer? Are we going to shove that down their throat? Are we going to kind of push that in their face? And we're going to be very sensitive to the fact that there's all people from all different backgrounds and denominations coming. And so we really want to be respectful of that. So I think that you'll really enjoy it. I think you'll come out with some very practical tools. It'll be broken up through the day. It's not going to be like you're sitting there listening to somebody want from 9 to 5. So it will be worth it, I promise you. And it definitely is going to feed the fire of your marriage if you invest and you commit to that day.
All right, for sure. All right, so we're on Strong Dads here. And so normally we get kind of honorary back and forth, but I'm going to be very respectful of my wife today.
Oh, goodness.
And I'm going to be asking for your advice.
Okay. I like this.
Yeah. Well, I will say that in the sense of, guys, if we can learn to ask our wife what they need or what they see is a challenge, I think it goes a long way. But ladies, you have to present it well also. You can't be condemning. You can't have contempt in your heart because of the mistakes that we've made in the past. I mean, if we're going to make this work, we have to have a little bit of dialogue back and forth with respect. So that's what we're going to try to represent a little bit here today.
Yeah.
So, hun, we're going to talk about a little bit of background here first, all right? Linda and I work in the marriage world all the time. We do marriage and family coaching. And so what we're going to be talking about are the things that we, generally speaking, are the areas where we see couples come in and they'll be under attack, okay? And so, all of these things we're going to talk about will attack your marriage, but it doesn't mean they have to defeat your marriage. And when you know that you're being attacked in these certain areas, there are lots of things that we can do to help safeguard, okay?
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you're being attacked by all of them, or maybe none of the lists or the things that we mentioned. It could be something very specific and different, but we know that these are the common things that we see a lot of couples coming in with, struggling with.
Yeah, so anything that can cause a division is going to put you on attack and then marital potential harm. And so, whether we're talking about arguing about how we drive on vacation together, I mean, if that creates the challenge, if that's the division, we don't tend to do that particular one. We hit plenty of the other areas, okay? So let's run through just the broad-based topics, but we're going to spend a little bit more time on some of those that we see maybe more frequently, okay? Yeah. So one of them, I think, right off the bat would just be affairs.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah. Having someone else in the picture, because, if you're having a bad day with your spouse or you get into an argument, if there's somebody at work or the neighborhood lady or guy that literally is telling you what you want to hear, it's very hard. It's very hard to have perspective and discernment about how to handle that conflict because you're kind of seeing it and finding it somewhere else. And it doesn't even have to be a physical affair, hon. It could be an emotional affair where you literally just turn to, if there is someone else that is your best friend other than your spouse of the opposite sex, that is dangerous.
That's very dangerous, yeah. Hon, in a weird way, a lot of our guys might not really connect this very quickly, but pornography use is an affair. Okay,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
No, I'm not having an affair. Well, the idea that emotionally and mentally you're searching for somebody outside of your spouse to please you, then that can be a problem.
Yeah, and then you take those
expectations
to your wedding or your marriage bed, and you're kind of like setting your partner up for failure because they're not going to live up to that fantasy world that you've been living in. And so it is a very dangerous, and there's some guys, hon, and women who think that's a very healthy aspect to their marriage. And swinging, I've had swingers in my office, like thinking that just spiced it up, and it just destroys the trust and the intimacy of the two.
Let me say that a little bit just to preface that. We have dealt with swingers as couples, dealt with pornography. It always, well, not always, but sometimes it sounds like a good idea at first. It sounds interesting, exciting. But we haven't seen people successfully pull that one off for their marriage, their spouse, and their kids.
Yeah,
right. It gets very complicated, and so the initial excitement might seem like this is a go, but you quickly find out that other factors come into play, and it's a reason why it's not good.
Yeah, it's very spicy in the moment, but then all of a sudden, when that person gives your husband or wife more attention, and that's your extra partner, then you're going to start thinking like, oh gosh, they're sneaking around behind my back. It's like, oh gosh, this is just so ugly. It's not going to end well.
Yeah. How about the next area that can be, this is not to be taken wrong because some of our, especially I will say our moms oftentimes get offended by this, but our kids can be the thing that can be the dividing wedge.
Yep.
Okay. And so we have to really have perspective on what the relationship dynamic should be from spouse to, or from mom and dad to kid versus spouse to spouse.
Well, you asked me early on of what would be one of the things that I want your help with to protect our marriage. And this would be one of them, that we keep things in the right priority order. And so if this isn't something you've never heard before, I'm sure you've talked about it on Strong Dads, but God has got to be number one. Yeah. That's what I want in my marriage, in my family, in my home, in my life. And then I want my spouse to be right under the Lord. I want him to be my top priority, above my kids, above my work, above my family of origin, all of that stuff. And so if anything trumps that, that gets things out of whack and out of order. So I need your help in keeping those things in priority. And the kids do go below you and I. They need to see that. That's the healthiest thing for our kids.
Yeah, we'll get into that one a little bit more because that one can go in a lot of different areas. How about this one? Work.
Yeah.
Work, and I will say more so today probably than at least in our recent adult time, because work is no longer as cleanly defined at a particular location.
Blurry lines.
Now that we're working at home, now that we have cell phones and laptops that can travel all over with us, this would be an area that you and I struggle because we do not carry a very good, and not good or bad, but our day is not a very 8 to 5 kind of day. And so sometimes we don't know when we're done working. And sometimes your brain gets spinning on something, and next thing you know, you've been staring at the phone or answering emails. And it's, honey, I have to say the other night.
Last night. I know what I was going to say. You're going to say that.
It was 10:30, 11 o'clock, and you're asking me work questions. And I'm like, can you just shut it down? Like, do we have to talk about work? Because pretty much, after 10 o'clock, there's not a whole lot of any logic that comes out of my head. Yeah. And you're asking me these questions. I'm like,
but hon, there's a lot of amazing men and women who are so loyal, so hardworking that their employer has this expectation of 24/7 availability, and that I can get to you at any time. And, outside of like healthcare and things like that, like you've got to set a boundary with your boss and your work environment. Like, this is when I shut down. This is when I turn it off. I'm not going to respond to you on vacation, or I'm not going to get to you at 10 o'clock at night. And so we are not doing that as a family, where we are clearly defining our boundaries of what's okay and what's not. Yeah. And you get to decide that. And if your boss says, no, that's not the way we work here, you may need to find another job.
Absolutely. And again, I mean, it goes down to a whole different avenue of conversation about, well, you don't really understand. But anyway, there are ways to go about that. Yeah. Okay. How about this one, hon? This is one we hear all the time with couples: money.
Yeah.
Money. How do we both see money? How do we use money? How does money carry influence in us in terms of security and power and all these kinds of things?
You know, hon, that was an early one in our marriage where you had some entrepreneurial spirit in you and some big ideas. You still have, but I've handled it a little differently, and I didn't realize that money to me was security. And so when I would come at you and get upset about you quitting your full-time job and starting this business, like that freaked me out, not because I don't believe in you, but because money has been like my safety net. And so I didn't realize how much that influenced how I responded to your dreams. And so that's something we've had to work through the last decades.
No, I remember part of that conversation was I felt like, hon, you don't care what I do as long as I bring home a paycheck. Just because, you know, you're like seeing me having this angst of I want to try something different, and it always came down to the paycheck. Like, well, as long as you provide a paycheck, I don't care what you do. You know,
I was paying the bills, and so I was like,
right, and so
we need to pay the house payment.
We had to. Again, that wasn't just Linda giving in or me giving in. That's that dance of compromising back and forth, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. When we work with couples, personality sometimes, you know, like I'm an extrovert more than Merrill is, and so crowds kind of wear him out and suck life out of him. And so we've really had to do that dance of how do we find that happy medium where we both feel like we're happy and content.
The one thing we can't change in people is personality, and it's sometimes the thing that we love when we, meet up with this person we're going to eventually marry. But then it also can be the thing that wears us out about them. And so seldom does anybody align, and there's probably a very good reason for that. Do they align perfectly on the introvert-extrovert scale, on the logic, emotional scales, all these different things, and there's a difference that causes enough rift between people sometimes that it can drive people apart.
Even drive, you know, like your aspirations and your motivations and the pace of life that you do, that's part of your personality. And some people, it's like, that just wears me out. And some people like, you're holding me back. And so we've got to be really respectful of where each other is at, but not squelching each other's dreams either. Yeah. That's the hard part.
Yeah. I just kind of think of that as lifestyle, right? The lifestyle choices. So how about this is a huge one. All right. We see it a lot in our practice, but I think a lot of couples don't really give it much time. They don't think about it.
Because they haven't grown up with it being important.
And that is issues of faith.
Yeah.
You know, do we have the same faith? Do we come from two different faiths, whether that's Catholic and Baptist, or whether that's Jew and Catholic, or whether that's agnostic, whatever? Because this is so important, because faith tends to be a foundation, a cornerstone of how you operate on so many of these other areas.
Parenting, work.
Yeah, all these other areas. Yeah. And so when faith is not aligned very well, and so people who think they can pull it off are those that say, well, we're just agnostic. But it starts to boil down weird. The older they get, the more they're with each other, they start to realize, well, they're still making decisions in life based on some principles.
Yeah.
Where did these principles come from? And if those aren't equally aligned, which we call faith, if they're not equally aligned, we're going to have some turmoil.
You know, I think when we built our house, how important it was that when we got that foundation set, that it was perfectly level. Because can you imagine if just your foundation walls are just a little bit off level, how messed up your whole home's going to be? And so we've had that settling, right? We've had to deal with that in our house. But, you know, that's a real dangerous place where your foundation is not aligned and strong.
And you have to sometimes reshore up your foundation. And because life happens, right? We're not static. And there are different forces.
Did you like that? That was like a little construction
metaphor. You tried to go there, and I'm like,
strong dads, right?
See where she goes with that. Next thing you know, she's going to be putting on her hammer on her belt. And the last big area that we see that causes kind of an attack in marriages are the family of origin. And man, that can be really crazy, wild stuff. It could be a family of origin in which we're very much meshed together, and so we can't quite leave mommy and daddy. Or we're like 3, 5, 10 times a day we're talking to mommy or daddy, even though we've got 2 of our own kids and we're trying to raise our own family. This could be family of origin that's really been messed up.
Yeah.
Right? Like
maybe dysfunctional.
Hun, this is a big reason for strong dads.
Yeah.
The number of men that I deal with that had little to no positive role model as a dad.
Yeah.
That's a family of origin problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got a couple that is wanting to get married, and he's been married multiple times, and she came from a very addicted filled house and no modeling either. And they literally are coming to me saying, we don't even know how that's done.
Yeah.
Like, we don't even know where to begin. Like, we don't even know how to build a foundation and what a healthy marriage looks like. And so I'm so thankful for their willingness to learn. They're hungry. And so my point is, okay, let's go slow so that we build this right, instead of just like getting all excited and being lustful toward each other and just like, we got to have this, and I would want to add, hun, one more, and that is the whole addiction piece. We kind of mentioned pornography, but, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, gambling, pornography, all of those things that are addictive behaviors that really skew our perspective and our approach to life and relationships, and, or maybe a history of abuse and trauma, those kind of things in our past, those skeletons in our closet. Man, if there are those things you just keep brushing under the rug, eventually they're so big you start tripping over them.
Yeah,
and that's what we got to deal with.
Those are some good points there.
Yeah.
So let's talk then, hun, about the idea of, well, then what? I don't think we're going to be able to effectively cover all of these. This could be a full seminar right here. But let's,
I think we'll do that.
Let's go over a few of these areas. And if we don't cover something that you think is really more relevant to your situation, your relationship, reach out to us, okay? Give us an email, give us a call. Maybe this is a conversation that we can help with, okay?
Yeah.
But let's talk about how we can help and give a little advice to protect the marriage so that we can get through these attacks, because the attacks are still going to come.
Yeah.
They're still going to come.
And like you said, we could be here all week, but let's get real practical, okay? I believe you are who you hang around. And so if you have couples around you that are having affairs and getting drunk and swinging and sneaking out on each other, like, that's very hard to build something solid and strong and healthy. So surround yourself with people who are where you want to be, and that's why I believe church is such an important place. Not saying they're perfect, for sure, but at least there's this goal and this desire to have healthy relationships and a faith-based foundation. And so, and there's couples, and hun, I am so excited about our online marriage program that we're going to be starting here soon. Because part of it is going to be an online community where you can be around other people who want what you want. And that's what we're excited about.
That have also seen struggles, right?
Yeah,
They've
for
seen
sure.
some
They're not
struggles.
perfect, but they're working toward better. And that's what I think you got to do. You got to surround yourself. And early on, we had some amazing families and couples and that really just spoke into our lives and helped us and mentored us and coached us and modeled for us. And I believe that's a great place to start.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. There's 3 check boxes, hun, that I tend to have that I better check, and I better have my couples at least consider to help feed me some information about how to check them before I even decide what kind of advice I'm going to give pertaining to the marriage being under attack. There's 3 different things, because if I can't put a check in these boxes, then I have a deeper level of work. It's, yes, I might want to work on the affair thing, but I don't even know if I have 2 people that are willing to work on the affair thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing is I have to have a real deep thought and conversation about the worthiness of the marriage, not from my perspective. We believe in marriage, okay? So, but it doesn't matter whether we believe in marriage if you don't believe in this marriage anymore. And so when somebody does come to us, and I will say sometimes they both come to us, but you quickly find out one is very interested in restoring and doing what they need to do in the marriage, and the other one has got one foot out the door.
But hon, I think we got to be careful, because there are some people that are in a just really dark place, and they're weary and they're exhausted, and maybe they have a teenager who's just rebelling, or maybe they've had COVID over and over again and had severe health issues. And so, man, I get it. And I think back on the story in the Bible, Old Testament, about Moses and how he was exhausted and he was trying to fight the Amalekites. And whenever he was holding up his arms, they were winning in battle. But then he got tired, and those arms would fall down. And when his arms fell down, they would be losing. And so so in the story, there are two men that come alongside Moses and help hold up his arms. And that's what I'm talking about, surrounding yourself with people who, when you get weary and you get depressed and you think this marriage isn't worth it, or I don't have the energy to put into it, there's someone saying you can do it.
Yeah.
There is hope. And that's why I think you just got to get around those people that are going to speak hope into your life, even when you don't feel it. But I get it. I mean, you got to have a desire to do better.
Yeah, and that's the worthiness. And if even if you get all that support around you, and how often do we have people that come to us and they only come to us because they wanted to check the box to say, well, I tried it, but their heart was never in it.
Yeah.
And so, your heart does have to be in it. And yes, it could be that you've been beaten down and
exhausted.
you want to be in it, but you don't even know how this can work anymore. That's all right. We can work through that. We can provide ways to find hope again in this. But if you've already hardened the heart and you don't think the marriage is worth it, then that's a different area that we have to go and try to see what level of reviving we can do.
Which leads to the second one, and that is you got to have two goodwill people with good intentions who really want sincerely to change and do better. If you've got one person who has a girlfriend and they're just going there because they want the spouse to leave them and they want to look like the hero here, and they've really got someone on the side, shame on you, because that's not going to work, and God cannot be mocked. And so you can fool your wife and fool your friends, but God is a just God, and he has holiness. And so if you're not having good intentions and your heart is not there, he's not going to bless that.
Yeah.
And he's going to reveal to others what's really going on.
Right. The third box that I like to talk about and try to do an assessment on this, because this is a big reason why they're often here, is their level of trust for the marriage and in particular for each other. In certain situations you might trust your spouse, but in other situations maybe not. Yeah. In other words, you may trust them to bring home a paycheck every week. They've never missed that. They've always been a provider, but you don't trust that their eyes are always staying in their home when they're at work, because they tend to have problems with wandering eyes and possibly even affairs. So trust has to be really kind of gleaned out and gone through and figured out what is our level of trust here? Because if I don't have that level of trust, then your words don't mean a whole lot.
And hon, that's a great point. And I think there's going to be somebody listening here and going like, okay, what do I do? I have broken trust. I've had an affair. She doesn't trust me. So what do I do now? And that's where I think we did a show on trust. And I think that you need to go back and learn the steps of rebuilding trust.
Right.
Like, you got to be intentional and you got to be honest. Like, I know I blew it. I know that you shouldn't be trusting me. I get it. I shouldn't be trusted. But this is what I'm willing to do to show that transparency, that honesty, that, giving the passwords, telling them where you're going, having accountability. Like, those are the things that you're going to do to get to rebuild trust.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so those are the checkbox areas that we like to go through. But let's talk first about maybe the folks who are having a problem with either affairs, pornography, emotional affairs. Maybe there's a lot of flirtatious behavior going on. Maybe we're not in a full-blown affair yet, but there's definitely an attraction outside of the marriage. Let's talk about what you would like your husband to do.
Yeah. And so we don't have a ton of time. So I'm going to kind of boil down a lot of this, not just with affairs, but with kids and with work and with friendships and things like that is, and I'm a huge boundary person, and that's setting healthy boundaries of, what's my responsibility and what's not. I'm not going to go to work at 10:30 where you're wondering where I'm at and I'm maybe with a coworker. I'm not going to put my kids above you. And so I'm going to tell them no, and I'm going to protect our date nights and work not getting in the way. And so for you and I, that was a huge thing. You mentioned about stopping work. And so we've had to set some boundaries there. And so maybe it's not that I don't think you're having an affair, but it's that you think I'm working too hard. And so I think that the things that we talked about, if you can put some healthy boundaries, and some people don't even know what that word means. And one of my favorite books is the book Boundaries, How to Say Yes and When to Say No by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. I really highly recommend it. And I know strong dads, a lot of them don't like to read. girls.
That's why we have this show. We just tell them.
We did actually a show on boundaries, but yeah, it's just something that I think is a general thing to kind of cover a lot of these areas.
Yeah, for sure. So this is part of the conversation. You have to be willing to have the conversation. And so Linda just points out that, these are some things that she wants to be able to talk about. And if I really value the marriage, I have to be able to sit down and be able to listen. But the boundaries do go both ways. Because they can come off in different ways. And so, this is a conversation that has to take place. We want to talk a little bit about the kids. Let's talk about kids, okay? So the idea here with our kids, we see on a regular basis, especially when we have a marriage that's faltering, we see kids becoming almost a safety blanket for the couple involved, okay? What's your recommendation there?
I mean, just what I said before, the priority of God, then spouse, then kids. Like, your children need to know that your partner comes first, your spouse comes first. And that's really healthy for them too. Like, you might think, oh, that's unloving. No, that's really important. That's why we're seeing entitled generation.
But so, yes, coming together and putting them higher, or at least in they're in a higher position of relationship. But then what does that look like? And so this is that idea, hon, that I want to encourage men, that this means you actually then living in a way where the kids know what that looks like. That means mom and dad coming together and establishing what the values are actually going to be in that home. Mom and dad, not mom or dad. Mom and dad, you guys taking time. We'd sometimes call it creating the Constitution. We're faith-based. We'd like yours to be faith-based. But no matter what it is, you better both be on the same page when it comes to what the values are going to be for your home. The second part of that, once you have your values established, then you have to establish, well, then what are the rules and expectations that we're going to have for our kids? Now, look, this is the whole idea that you and mom are coming onto the same page there. That way if you both agree on what the rules are and what the expectations are, then the two of you won't be shocked or surprised when one suggests something and the other one doesn't. You won't be countering each other. And then lastly, so what are the consequences or implementation? What's that going to actually look like? What are we going to actually say to the kid? We recently, our 14-year-old finally got his cell phone, okay? He's the last 14-year-old on planet Earth.
That's what he says.
To get a cell phone. So, but now he's got one, okay, and the world is good now. And the whole idea there is you and I had conversation, okay? So what are his boundaries on that going to be? What are his consequences going to be? We're both on the same page with that, so that when, and not necessarily if something goes wrong, but when it goes wrong, because I'm not going to make the assumption that, well, maybe it won't. At that point, you and I are on the same page on what we're going to do.
We're prepared. And that same boundary line, needs to go with our family of origin. The Bible says that we are to leave our father and mother and to become one flesh with our spouse. And so that leave and cleave is really important. And so I've told so many premarital couples, like, you got to show your parents that you two are a team and that you're speaking together as one voice. And man, if you start that early, that really goes well with your parents and your in-laws.
Yeah, for sure. So guys, we went through some major areas that we really feel like us guys, we need to step up our game, and we need to at least be starting the conversation with our wife about how we're going to protect. Remember, Satan is alive and well, and he would love to see all of your marriage blown apart, okay? Because nobody wins in that except for Satan. All right. And so we are going to really emphasize, get this job done. Don't sit on the sidelines at protecting your family.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for letting me come on today.
Hey,
It's kind of weird having strong dads.
I know. She was looking around when I was setting things up, like, what are you putting that up for?
Yeah.
Well, it's because of strong dads.
Hey, we do have another podcast, Rock Solid Radio. I don't know if you ever mention it.
All the time. Usually I screw up the advertisements and I give the wrong ones.
So we would love for you to kind of do both, and share these shows. Share these shows with other men and other families, and in, because this is really important. This is a message. This is our mission. We believe that God has called us to be those men helping hold up your arms when you're weary in battle, when you're struggling. We all need that. We need one another. That's what God has called us to do.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Hun, thank you very much for joining us. We'd like to also thank the Crimers Beer House as well as Casey's Outdoor Solutions for coming alongside of Strong Dads and continuing to support our work here. Our challenge is for you to go out there and really start to unite and really defend your marriage. Be mindful and intentional about it. Don't just assume it's going to happen. All right.
Yeah.
So,
and Kyle, I hope you feel better.
Oh, he'll be fine. He's probably out right now doing some wood project.
Somebody's got to be nice to Kyle. Kyle, we miss you.
All right. So, guys, thanks a lot again. Go out there and be a strong dad. You are prettier than he is.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Kyle Carver from Strong Dads. Strong Dads podcast would love to thank the Crimers Beer House for coming alongside of us. The Crimers Beer House was started in 1982 by the Crimer family, and since that time, they have definitely become a Cincinnati favorite. So if you're looking for an incredible meal in an incredible setting, definitely go down to Route 128 and check out the Crimers Beer House.